Tennessee. We copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery rocket, go for deploy.
Thanks, June, and to everybody in the shuttle program. The crew must go for launch.
Roger. Nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
You're watching live coverage of the NASA SpaceX Crew 7 mission as they return to Earth. Dragon Endurance departed the International Space Station at 8:20 a.m. Pacific Time Monday morning. On board Crew 7 are NASA's Jasmine Mogbelli, ESA astronaut Andreas Mogensen, JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov. Currently, they're on their way to the targeted splashdown site just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. My name is Kate Tice, Senior Quality Systems Engineering Manager here at SpaceX, and joining me today from NASA Communications is Sandra Jones. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Kate. It is great to be here. Upon departing the International Space Station, Dragon underwent a sequence of departure burns. The crew also had a rest period and has since kicked off preparations for re-entry, including getting in their launch and re-entry spacesuits and successfully performing a leak check on those suits. This next phase of the mission is when things will really start to amp up, and Dragon has a series of steps to complete before returning Crew 7 home.
First, Dragon will maneuver to the correct attitude and jettison its trunk, which is the cylindrical, unpressurized part of the spacecraft. The trunk is currently connected to the aft or the bottom section of the Dragon capsule, and that's where the heat shield is located. So, in order to expose that heat shield and get the vehicle ready for atmospheric re-entry, we're going to jettison that trunk.
And from there, the spacecraft will use its forward thrusters to perform a deorbit burn, which will put Dragon on a trajectory to return to Earth. This burn will last about 14 minutes once it starts. The deorbit burn uses Draco thrusters on Dragon, primarily the 4 located on the forward bulkhead, and is executed at the apogee, or the highest point of Dragon's current orbit around the Earth. This will alter Dragon's path to ultimately line it up to re-enter Earth's atmosphere and splash down off the coast of Florida. Splashdown is planned for 2:47 a.m. Pacific, 5:47 a.m. Eastern this morning, again off the coast of Pensacola, Florida.
It's all going to go pretty quickly, but before we go any further, let's take a minute to meet our crew.
First up is Lieutenant Colonel Jasmine Mogbelli, who hails from Baldwin, New York, and earned a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a master's degree in aerospace engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School. She also graduated with honors from the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School. As an AH-1W Super Cobra pilot and Marine Corps test pilot, she has flown more than 150 combat missions. In all, she accrued 2,000 hours of flight time in more than 25 aircraft. At the time of her selection as an astronaut, Mogbelli was testing H-1 helicopters and serving as the Quality Assurance and Avionics Officer for VMX-1. She is also the proud mom of twin girls. With this mission, she will have logged an estimated 199 days in space during her first space flight, including 6 hours and 42 minutes during a spacewalk. And today, she is the commander of Crew 7.
Sitting next to Jasmine is pilot Andreas Mogensen. This is Mogensen's second trip to the space station. His first was as the flight engineer for the ESA IRIS mission in 2015. He was born in Copenhagen, Denmark, and graduated with an international baccalaureate from the Copenhagen International School, a master's degree in aeronautical engineering from Imperial College London, and a doctorate in aerospace engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. In 2015, Mogensen became the first Danish person to go to space and currently is serving as the European Astronaut Liaison Officer to NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. With this mission, he will have logged 209 days in space across 2 flights.
And before we jump into this next one, you might hear some banging behind us. This is a working facility, as you may know, open 24 hours a day, working to build rockets. So if you do hear that, that is some of what you might be hearing in the background. So next up in the role of mission specialist is Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Satoshi Furukawa. Furukawa's interest in space began when he was 5 years old and saw the Apollo 11 moon landing on TV. He was also a fan of the Japanese TV space hero Ultra 7. His professional career began as a medical doctor, but after seeing a news report about Japan auditioning for new astronauts to do science experiments on the space station, he decided to apply. He was selected by the National Space Development Agency of Japan to be an astronaut candidate in 1999. His first mission to the International Space Station was as a flight engineer for Expedition 28 and 29 that launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in June 2011. Following this mission, he will have logged 366 days in space across his 2 trips to space.
And to round it all out, mission specialist Konstantin Borisov was selected to be a cosmonaut in 2018, and this was his first trip to space. He has a Bachelor of Economics from the Russian Academy of Economics, a Master of Science in Operations Research and Systems Analysis from Warwick University in Coventry, UK, and a Master in Aircraft Life Support Systems from the Moscow Aviation Institute. He's worked for companies such as Volvo and the Boston Consulting Group. He is also an experienced freediving instructor and an international freediving judge. He will end this mission logging 199 days in space. Now, to prepare for upcoming events, the Dragon spacecraft is currently doing a couple of things autonomously, meaning automatically. It's isolating the thermal control system fluid loops from the radiator. This system is what will help keep Dragon, the internal temperature of Dragon comfortable for Jasmine, Andy, Satoshi, and Konstantin during reentry. Dragon is also initiating separation of the claw mechanism, which will terminate all the data, the power, and the fluid connections between the capsule and the trunk. As I mentioned earlier, at the base of the vehicle is where that heat shield is located, and that's where the trunk is currently connected. So we're going to jettison that trunk in order to prepare the vehicle for re-entry, as that heat shield is a critical component of that re-entry, given the fact that it's going to be re-entering through the atmosphere. The atmosphere is going to be doing a ton of that work, creating lots of heat and friction and helping to slow the vehicle down using that heat shield. So we want to get the trunk out of the way and separate it from the capsule. We'll be sure to bring you live views of the vehicle whenever we have them. Unfortunately, due to ground station coverage, we don't always have those beautiful views of the capsule or of the crew inside the capsule, but as soon as we have them, we will be sure to bring them to you. On your screen now is a live view of SpaceX Mission Control here, actually just over to the side of us, and that is where Dragon operators are stationed on console, monitoring and observing the crew and the vehicle to ensure that everything is going as planned. As I said, Dragon is doing several things autonomously, and these operators are monitoring those systems and those checkouts. So let's talk a little bit about the flight history of Dragon. So the development of Dragon for crew started with the Dragon cargo spacecraft. Dragon was designed from the beginning for flying humans to space, so much so that even the first Dragon, like the one just behind us, had a window. Before we could fly humans, our teams implemented a number of design upgrades to make sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 were suitable for flying people, and then put both vehicles through thousands of tests to prove their safety. Dragon is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit and beyond. It is the only spacecraft currently flying that is capable of returning significant amounts of cargo to Earth, and is the first private spacecraft to take humans to the space station. Dragon is fully autonomous, which means that it can basically fly itself. But it also features full manual override capabilities just in case of an emergency. So taking a closer look at it, there you can see an animation. It stands at almost 27 feet tall from the bottom of the trunk to the top of the nose cone, and it's composed of two main elements: the capsule, which is designed to hold crew and pressurized cargo, which is the top half, and then the trunk, which is the unpressurized section there at the bottom half. The nose cone at the very top of the capsule protects the docking system and also the guidance navigation control system. The nose cone opens for docking and remains attached to Dragon, unlike the previous version of Dragon, and that helps towards our reusability efforts. So right now, that nose cone is actually open, as we have not yet closed it in preparation for the for capsule reentry. Dragon has a final burn to perform, which will be the reentry burn, where we'll utilize, as Sandra mentioned earlier, the 4 forward bulkhead thrusters located at the top, and we can't use those if the nose cone is closed. So it's still open, and we'll close that after that burn is complete. Now, opposite of the nose cone is the trunk. It provides attachment points for Falcon 9, the Dragon capsule, and cargo. One half of the trunk is covered in, in solar arrays, and that helps to generate power while Dragon is on station. The other half of the trunk contains a radiator that rejects heat from the active thermal control system to space using SpaceX's new Pika tiling technology. The trunk also now has new aerodynamic fins, which help provide stability in the event of an emergency abort. Now, in the event of an abort, Dragon is outfitted with 8 Super Draco thrusters. And like the name implies, they are very similar to the nominal Draco thrusters that Dragon uses for nominal operations, but the Super Dracos are extra powerful, and they will power the astronauts to safety. Dragon's Super Draco launch escape system is a key safety feature of Dragon, which gives the crew the ability to quickly separate from Falcon 9 and safely escape from the time of launch all the way to orbit. This is a feature that no other spacecraft in history has possessed. Dragon is also equipped with 16 Draco thrusters, as I mentioned earlier, used to orient the spacecraft during the mission, including apogee and perigee maneuvers, orbit adjustment, and attitude control. Each Draco thruster is capable of generating 90 pounds of force in the vacuum of space. Inside, the spacecraft is designed to accommodate up to 7 crew members with modular seats that can be removed and replaced by additional cargo. The seats are made of carbon fiber and will be custom sized for any crew members flying on board. It is capable of flying up to 7 individuals, but we only have 4 on board today. The control panel is centered between the pilot and the commander seats and consists of 3 touchscreen displays, allowing the crew to operate the vehicle and fly it manually. Once we get that onboard view of the Dragon capsule, we'll be able to see that control panel that, like I said, rests between the pilot and the commander seats. It's one of my favorite views that we get from crew missions because it makes you feel like you're inside the capsule with them. You can even see some of the telemetry and the visualizations on the screens.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the trunk as you were talking about Dragon. We are just about 7 minutes away from that trunk separation. Again, we do discard that trunk because it's no longer needed. It provides that power with the solar arrays to Dragon, but because they are about to deorbit and come home, that's no longer needed. So that will be separated here in just a few minutes from now, and then it will harmlessly re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. So while we await that, let's talk a little bit about some of the science that Crew 7 participated in. Over the last 23 years, crews aboard the International
Dragon SpaceX deorbit sequence start in 5 minutes. For awareness, this will occur during a TDRS handover. The next SpaceX call will confirm nominal trunk jettison.
Dragon Cappy started deorbit sequence in 5 minutes, and we'll catch you after 10 seconds.
And we did just hear those words from the Corps here in Hawthorne, California, up to Jasmine Mogbelli, the commander of Crew 7, letting her know and the Crew 7 crew know that everything is looking good. They're proceeding towards deorbit and reentry here. targeting that reentry at 2:47 a.m. Pacific time this morning off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. And they did mention TDRS. That's that tracking and data relay system. And as Kate was mentioning, we don't always have views of the crew on board Dragon or the International Space Station, just based off of some of the handover between satellites that occurs. So this is expected, but we'll talk to the crew once the trunk is successfully jettisoned. So continuing on to talk a little bit about some of the science on board Crew 7 that they helped to conduct. Over the last 23 years, crews aboard the International Space Station have completed thousands of scientific and educational experiments, and Crew 7 added to that growing number during their 6-month mission to the space station. One of those particular studies is called CIPHER, or the Complement of Integrated Protocols for Human Exploration Research. For longer journeys to the Moon and Mars, scientists are examining how extended time in space affects the human body. Astronauts on missions of various lengths can participate in an integrated set of studies that monitors their health before, during, and after missions. Results could play a pivotal role in ensuring the safety, health, and success of astronauts on deep space exploration missions. CIPHER began with Crew 7 and is continuing with Crew 8, which launched and arrived to the space station just last week. They also contributed to Sleep in Orbit, an investigation from ESA, or the European Space Agency. This study examines the physiological differences between sleep on Earth and in space. The stages of sleep are related to brain states and can be accessed based on the brain's electrical signals. Sleep in Orbit uses an earbud EEG device that measures the brain activity of astronauts during sleep. The device was developed in Denmark to easily wear without the helmet-like network of wires used for standard EEGs, making it less likely to interfere with sleep. Results could help guide development of measures to prevent or even mitigate poor sleep and its adverse effects, enhancing safety and improving work quality during missions. Additionally, controlling microbial growth in recycled wastewater is necessary to provide water that is safe for drinking and for personal hygiene, and to protect the integrity of life support systems for human habitation in space. Bacterial adhesion and corrosion studied how spaceflight affects the formation of biofilms, which are communities of multiple species of bacteria that adhere to surfaces. This investigation looked at the ability of biofilms to corrode stainless steel surfaces, similar to those in space station's drinking water system, and examined how well disinfectants cleared out those biofilms. Results could provide insight into better ways to control and remove resistant biofilms, and could contribute to the success of future long-duration missions. So these are just a few of the more than 200 science experiments and technology demonstrations that took place during Crew 7's mission.
Now let's talk a little bit about the suits that the Crew 7 crew is wearing. They are iconic, they're gorgeous, and most importantly, they are safe. The suit's primary function is to protect the crew in the event of a cabin depressurization. If that were to occur, the suit would inflate to provide a habitable environment long enough for the crew to return home. The flame-resistant materials on the outer layer also protect the crew in the event of a fire. Custom-tailored, single-piece suit. This means that the helmet, gloves, and boots all remain attached. The helmet is made from a 3D printed nylon and has a visor that pivots open. The quick disconnect, or QD, on the right thigh mates to an umbilical on the seat. This provides air for ventilation, as well as a oxygen, nitrogen, or nitrox mixture for pressurization, and allows for the electronics to be connected all from a single location on the suit. A tubing network inside the suit delivers air to the neck and limbs to keep the crew cool while wearing the suit. The suit's communication system consists of helmet-mounted microphones and in-ear speakers. All in all, it takes less than 15 minutes to put on the suit. Of course, that is also with some practice as well. The suit, like I said, is intended to be used inside of Dragon. It's an intravehicular activity, or IVA suit. When the astronauts move onto the International Space Station, the suits actually stay on board Dragon. They hang them up to dry, and then once they're dry, they get packed away. The astronauts will then use NASA's extravehicular activity, or EVA suit, when performing activities outside of the International Space Station, such as, of course, spacewalks. So a little bit of a difference there between the two suits. Very important difference, because they are certainly made for two different intentions.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to jump in on the EVA spacesuits that you were talking about for those external spacewalks, we did have one spacewalk that occurred during Crew 7's mission for NASA, and Jasmine Moghbeli, the commander of Crew 7, conducted that spacewalk. It was her very first spacewalk, and it lasted 6 hours and 42 minutes.
Wow, that is a long time for a first one, just to me, having never done one.
Right, yeah, they usually are about, 6-7 hours or so. The limit on the time for a spacewalk is what we call consumables. So we often say that a spacesuit is like a mini spaceship. It has all the oxygen that the crew needs to breathe. It purges nitrogen, everything that they need to live and work in the environment of the vacuum of space is contained inside that spacesuit. So they can't do that forever. Obviously, there's a limit to how long those consumables last, but typically they are around that 6-7 hour time frame.
Very cool. So we just got word that claw separation is currently underway. That is on time. We did hear a call out indicating that it was going to begin at the 48-minute mark, and so it looks like that is tracking on time. The claw is where the umbilicals for the power and the telemetry from the trunk and its solar arrays are connected to the capsule. Once we are disconnected completely, the Dragon will be running exclusively on its battery power. After that claw is completely separated, we will jettison the trunk, and that is once again when we basically separate the trunk from the vehicle, and that allows us to expose the heat shield, which will be critical for re-entry operations as the vehicle is coming back through the Earth's atmosphere.
That's right, and it looks like we're now just about 20 seconds or so away from trunk separation. So everything continuing to go really smoothly this morning, and then right after that happens will be the deorbit slew when the vehicle helps to orient itself to the proper position ahead of the deorbit burn. And we'll talk more about that as we get a little closer to deorbit burn now, about less than 5 minutes away from starting. So things
That's
really
great.
moving quickly this morning.
Yeah, that deorbit burn is important because that is when the crew commits to that exact location. If you've watched our webcasts for Splashdown or crew return missions previously, you know that we're always tracking alternative. We just got word that trunk separation is complete.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal trunk jettison.
All right, good news there. Thought we might hear something back from the crew, but as mentioned before, there is a TDRS handover, meaning we're switching from one satellite to another of the tracking and data relay satellite system. So we might not hear anything back from the crew right now, but we got good news from SpaceX core Arthur Barialt that the trunk has separated. So the heat shield is exposed, and that trunk will naturally disintegrate as it also re-enters the Earth's atmosphere.
And the trunk served its purpose by gathering energy from the sun through its solar cells and converting that to battery power. So since we separated the trunk, we can't generate any more new power, but we don't need to since we're coming home and Dragon has enough battery power already stored on board.
Yeah. Like we said, once we have views of the crew inside the capsule, we hope to bring them to you due to ground station coverage. We don't have live views through the entire show, unfortunately, and we would love to see them just as much as you, so we hope to have those soon. But I can tell you that the crew is suited up and in their seats. They performed a leak check on those suits before we started the broadcast, and everything looked good with those, and so they're basically in their seats, buckled in with the safety harness, and everything. Actually, look at that. Ask and you shall receive. There we have our first views of the morning inside Dragon Endurance with our Crew 7 crew.
And as you mentioned, Kate, they are suited up for this phase of flight. They do wear those spacesuits during some of the more dynamic phases of flight, for example, during launch and as they reach orbit, as well as docking, undocking, and deorbit and splashdown. And so we are seeing a view here in the center of your screen. That's Commander Jasmine Mogbelli of NASA. This is her first space flight. And we are just about 2 minutes and 20 seconds away from that deorbit burn beginning.
Yeah, we did see that the crew did have their visors in the open position. That is allowed for now. We will hear from SpaceX Core instruction to the crew to close their visors and put them in the lock position. I can't quite remember off the top of my head if that comes prior to deorbit burn or prior to the reentry phase, but we'll find out soon enough.
And that deorbit burn, again, will place Dragon on a precise trajectory to return to the splashdown zone, which is targeted for off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, rather. And the deorbit burn is quite a long burn. It lasts about 14 minutes once it begins. So at this point, we're now about 1 minute and 30 seconds away from that deorbit burn beginning. Again, we're getting another view inside of Dragon here. On your left is Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov. And then to his right is ESA, or European Space Agency astronaut Andy Mogensen, NASA astronaut Jasmine Mogbelli, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Satoshi Furukawa on the far right. So now we're getting another view of Konstantin Borisov here. And like we've said a couple times, they are suited up for this phase of the flight and will remain in their spacesuits all the way through the deorbit burn, through splashdown, and as they get onto the recovery vessel, as well as they are egressed or exit Dragon.
Now, when the crew egresses from the capsule, we will utilize the side hatch, which is actually in view right here. It was that the rectangle that had the black outline just at the feet of the crew. That is the side hatch. That has been closed since when they ingressed to the capsule on launch day. So basically, when they're up at the International Space Station, they utilize the forward hatch, which is the hatch at the top of the capsule, because that's where the international docking adapter is located, and that's what docks to the space station and allows them to ingress and egress onto the station and into the capsule during their stay. So, and we just got a call out saying that deorbit burn has begun. This burn is expected to last for about 14 minutes.
Yep, and just a quick recap here. Within the last 10 minutes, Dragon has jettisoned its trunk and initiated that deorbit burn just seconds ago, 20 seconds ago, and it is a little less than 14 minutes in all. So for these operations, NASA and SpaceX do closely coordinate with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safety zone to ensure public safety and for the safety of all those involved in the recovery operations, as well as the crew on board the returning spacecraft. Multiple notices regarding splashdown are issued to the mariners in advance and during recovery operations, and Coast Guard patrol boats are deployed to discourage boaters from entering the splashdown zones. So we do really want to stress to the public the need to respect this safety zone. Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a hazardous operation, and any other boats interfering increases the risk to the astronauts in the capsule, the teams working to recover them from the water, and the safety of those that come too close. So for the safety of the crew and your safety, we do recommend you sit back and watch, and we'll continue to bring you the best possible views of our astronauts' homecoming.
Like I mentioned earlier, this deorbit burn is the last time that those 4 forward Draco thrusters will fire. Dragon Endurance has not yet entered the Earth's atmosphere. This deorbit burn is what will line the vehicle up and put it on its final trajectory to the landing site. Like we mentioned earlier, we're targeting just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida today. Right now, Jasmine, Andy, Satoshi, and Konstantin are using their screens to keep tabs on the burn duration, the Draco thruster firings, and trajectory details like entry angle, capsule perigee, and how much distance remaining until the deorbit burn completes. Dragon is flying itself, so all the crew really has to do is stay strapped in their seats and keep tabs on things, which sounds easy, but I've said it before, I'll say it again. If I were in there, I would be wanting to take off my strap and look out the window because what a view it would be. Now with Jasmine, Andy, Satoshi, and Constantine about ready to deorbit and splash back down on planet Earth, they'll be heading to one of 7 targeted sites supported by SpaceX and NASA. All of these sites are located off the coast of Florida, either in the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean. Spreading the supported sites across multiple locations helps to maximize the return opportunities for this mission and future crews, lowering the chance that we'll have to wave off due to bad weather.
And again, NASA and SpaceX jointly selected primary splashdown location for Crew 7 off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. This selection process works with a lot of different variables, including the space station's orbital trajectory, what landing sites are available and have favorable weather, how much free flight capability Dragon has for the trip home, and the sleep schedule for the returning crew members. And so all of those boxes were checked. Pensacola was considered prime, and we are hearing that the weather there is just perfect. The wave height is very minimal, so looking forward to see the crew splash down here in less than an hour.
Absolutely. Now, in general, for return, we start calculating daily return options based off of the space station's current orbit and Dragon's capabilities to maneuver and line up for re-entry. The time from undock to landing at the primary site can vary from less than 6 hours to more than 39. Getting home the quickest comes with some obvious benefits, but we always have to make sure that the crew is properly rested for dynamic operations, which prevents us from scheduling 20-plus hour days for them, thankfully. Trajectory and ballistics experts provide the daily opportunities that would line up with Dragon, would line up Dragon with the 7 landing zones and split them into what we call ascending and descending opportunities.
Dragon uses